Hey friend, Church D coming at you once again. Thank you for tuning into What Does It Take to Win. I hope you're doing well. It's been quite some time since you've heard from me, and I want to apologize for that. I've just been very busy being a husband, a father, and an entrepreneur. 2025 was quite the year. I'm grateful for all that God has done for me in 2025. I'm also grateful that it's over and we've stepped into 2026. So you didn't hear from me during 2025 because my wife and I, we welcomed a second child. So now we are the proud parents of two healthy, beautiful children. If you know anything about having children, having babies and all that good stuff, you know that we are not getting a lot of rest. So just say a quick prayer for us to be able to get some sleep and all that good stuff. But I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're ready to tune into yet another episode of What Does It Take to Win. But before we jump into it, I'd like to remind you guys, to click the link in the description, and then that way you'll have access to all of my content. So you'll be able to check out my entire catalog of music and my latest release entitled Transitions. It came out last year. So go ahead and check that out. If you need some instrumentals, beats, etc., go ahead, check the link in the description. If you're looking into getting better at playing piano, if you're looking into getting started at playing piano, you can go ahead and book me. Just click the tab that says book me now, and then we can schedule some piano coaching and some consulting for my fellow music directors and all that good stuff. And last but not least, if you need anything produced, just go ahead and reach out to me. If you need a musician as well, if you're looking to hire somebody to play piano or to even do some sessions and all that good stuff, link in the description. You'll find some good stuff in there. Okay. So I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're ready. We're going to dive right into this topic. Now, this was something that came to mind, I want to say, towards the middle to the end of 2025. I just didn't have time to release it. So I sat back and I decided to kind of write down my ideas so I wouldn't forget about it, because I really felt the need that this needed to be shared with you guys. So this episode, we're going to be focusing on aging and growing older. So the title of this episode is simply, I'm old now. Now what? Okay, so I'll say it one more time. I'm old now. Now what? Growing old is both beautiful and frightening. On one hand, it's a blessing to be able to gain more wisdom, knowledge, and experience based upon what life has taught you. It's also exciting to witness events that will one day be regarded as historical. How cool is that? I can only imagine how the generations before us, dealt with or even feel about, what we're studying or what we've studied in the history books. Could you imagine growing up in the era of maybe the civil rights movement, the busing, the integration, all of that cool stuff that we got a chance to kind of study in school? Imagine experiencing that firsthand. It's crazy. As a matter of fact, I was even chatting with somebody about that a few months back who lived through it. And they had quite the point of view on how everything worked out during those times. So yeah, it's very interesting to me. On the other hand, growing old can be considered very frightening because everything is changing. Our bodies are changing. Our mindset is changing. If you're growing, obviously, you don't want to be stuck. And the world around us is constantly in a state of change, progressing forward into the next big thing. You don't have to be frightened or scared of getting old. Just embrace it and continue to grow. Find your place. And as you and I are growing old or growing older and the world is changing, here are some points to consider so that we can continue evolving with the times. Okay. And now to summarize what I just said, as we grow old, it's important, to do things differently, right? So I think that will be the main focal point of this episode, is that we're growing older. Let's not get stuck in our ways. Let's, find ways to do things differently. Obviously, I'll always have some supporting points or supporting points that will go with, my main idea. And so the first point is you want to become enemies with pride. Okay. The second point is to get out of your comfort zone. And the third and final point is to let it go. Okay, I'll say that one more time, just in case you missed it. The first point is to become enemies with pride. The second point is to get out of your comfort zone. And the third and final point is to let it go. Okay, now let's start with the first point. Okay, let's jump right into it. So as I mentioned, we're growing older. It's important for us to do things differently. Become enemies with pride. Don't allow pride to be your downfall and keep you stuck. We've reached an age where we believe we know it all. Some of us. We've seen it all. We've experienced it all. But understand that because the world keeps changing, what you or I might have experienced, what knowledge we have, what we already know in our generation, it might not necessarily compare to the generations after us. Let's look at some of the things that might have stressed us. The same stressors we had growing up, the same stressors we're dealing with present day, they might not be considered as difficult or, stressful to deal with by the generations after us. And we can even consider the generation before us. We can look at living expenses and, the difficulties and the challenges that my generation has been facing as it pertains to home ownership. And this may not be all the way accurate, but there were some articles that came out. And what I mean by it not being all the way accurate is I'm not saying word for word what the article said. And, all of the details aren't going to be 100% there. So you can go ahead and do your own research to fact check what I'm saying. But I digress. There are some challenges that my generation has been facing as far as, home ownership goes. And it's simply because of how inflation worked over the years. Like I said, there was an article or several articles that came out showing how the salary that, adults had, let's say 25, 35 years ago, if you compare it to the salary that adults have now, back then it was much easier for adults to become homeowners. But now, due to rising living costs and salaries that are not necessarily increasing the way, they should be increasing if you're going to compare it to the living expenses, most adults, most families are not able to become homeowners and they have to sort of stick to renting. And a lot of people my age and my generation have to stick to renting places that simply they're not fully happy with, places that they have to kind of settle on. So that's a different stressor that, had to be dealt with. You had the older generation that might have had to deal with the learning curves of technology. Now you have the present day generation that knows technology, but then, we don't own anything, right? So the older generation owned things, didn't know technology. The present day generation knows technology, doesn't really own things. Now, what's going to happen to the generation that is after us? There was yet another article that I was checking out that was expressing that my children, they're going to grow up in a world with artificial intelligence. And they're not necessarily going to know a world without artificial intelligence. And to me, that's very interesting. The type of artificial intelligence, my generation had growing up does not compare to what my children are going to experience. Now, how does this fully tie into pride? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tie in the final loose ends and then move on to my second point. So in my first point, I'm, telling you to become enemies with pride. So don't become so prideful and say, well, back in my day, we had to deal with these stressors and, we got through it just fine, right? And then now, as you're getting older, you can't keep up with the times, right? You want to humble yourself enough to be able to keep up with the times. So, how I mentioned the generation before us, they were able to own things, but they weren't super familiar with technology. Now it's like my present day generation is familiar with technology, but we don't really own things. I believe that, there's a mutual exchange that can take place between the two generations. The generation before us getting older, they can show us, what they did in order to in order to own land, in order to own property, etc. My generation, we can teach them about technology and how to apply that to, ownership, and then, we can have that bond. And then now the generation after us, they can teach the older generations about artificial intelligence and how to use that. We could use that to work faster, to work smarter, to be more efficient, to just have more outputs and to be more accurate. So that's pretty much the summary of my first point. Don't be so prideful, and don't allow that to cause you to be stuck to the point where you can't really learn anymore and you can't continue growing. Okay, so become enemies with pride. That was a bit long. Let me go ahead and rush through my other 2 points. So the second point is to get out of your comfort zone. Understand that just because you do something one way does not mean that you'll be able to do it that way forever. The world is constantly advancing. Technology is always changing. And we can look at things in the music industry, right? That's an industry that I'm pretty familiar with. So let's look at the trends of music. Music is constantly changing. It's always a wave that's just up and down. The music that I listened to in high school was different than the music I listened to my freshman year in college. When I was graduating college, that music has also changed. When it was time for me to get married, that music changed. I have 2 children who are close in age. The music has changed since they were both born and as they're getting older. Even the way music is being created has changed a lot. And that has actually pushed me to get out of my comfort zone. I got used to using one specific type of software. I want to say I started using that when I was maybe a teenager. And it's been just about 20-ish years, since I've been using that software. And I've gone through these different cycles with that software where the companies were being bought out. And then I was kind of frightened, like, okay, maybe I have to learn a different software. Then the company was restored. So I stuck with it again. And then it did something else. So then I ended up just learning a different type of software to kind of be familiar with it. And then here we are, I'm still working on a new type of software. I don't even use the older one anymore, and I had to get out of my comfort zone because, eventually that software became completely obsolete. It's not even being used anymore by anybody. And if I had stuck with that, then who knows what I would have been doing. And then here's like another idea to consider. So when I'm pretty sure I might have talked about this on a previous episode. I just can't remember right now. I was a member of a specific fitness club, and this fitness club or this gym was sort of far away from where I live. It would take about maybe a 25 minute commute to get there. And I know that doesn't sound like it's a whole lot, but when you have a wife and a child, it can be a bit hectic, especially if you're going to take almost a half hour to commute one way and then work out and then another half hour to commute back. It can be a bit demanding. You have like maybe a 2 or 3 hour turnaround, right? But I was comfortable with this gym because I had been going there since I was fresh out of college. And that's really where I got more and more into shape. So fast forward, I moved away from, my parents' house, ended up getting married and all that good stuff. And so I found, a local branch. Like I said, it was about a 25-30 minute drive, right? 20 to 30 minute drive depending on traffic from where I lived. And I was loyal to that gym. I was chatting with my wife. I was just like, yeah, this is a cool gym. We would go there together here and there before we had kids, obviously. And, the gym began to do something different where the prices were being inflated. So the prices were inflated one time, and I looked at it. I was just like, okay, I don't like that. But, you know, this is my gym. I'll remain loyal to it. I'm comfortable here. See, that's the word comfort. Then the prices inflated once more. I definitely didn't like that. And, I had a conversation with my wife about it. And she was one to say, you know what, you don't have to be loyal to something that's hurting you, right? You could get away from that. I was just like, no, I'm going to figure it out. Then the last straw was they changed their hours of operation. So the window of time that I originally had and that I was able to actually go to that gym, it now was closed. So now it's just like, okay, what am I going to do? That kind of is going to make me flip my schedule completely upside down. So, after careful consideration, I ended up canceling this gym membership. And, with something that was really cool, another gym, another fitness center, fitness club, it opened up, I want to say maybe 3 minutes away from where I actually live. So it just sounded like a no-brainer. And it was much cheaper. I could actually walk there. It was cheaper. I could still spend more time with my family. And my wife could actually get in there and work out as well because it was closer. So I canceled my gym membership, moved on to this new gym, and come to find out a few months later, the gym that I was loyal to actually ended up closing down. It was shut down completely at that location. Could you imagine if I stayed there just because I was comfortable? That would have been terrible. There's actually more to this story concerning my wife and the birth of our second child. But if you want to know more about that, I'll actually need you to reach out to me because I'm not going to share that, at least at this time, on this podcast. So you can actually reach out to me if you want to do like a one-on-one coaching call, and then I can share that with you. This was supposed to be me rushing through my second point, but I don't know how much rushing I did just now. But all to say, you don't want to get so comfortable that you're stuck, right? You want to get out of your comfort zone. So that was my second point. Get out of your comfort zone. And finally, my third and final point is to let it go. Just let it go. Growing up, I always had long hair, right? I had a lot of hair at one point in my life. I want to say for about 10 years, I had long dreads down my back. And as I got a little bit older, into my mid-20s, I noticed that my hair was beginning to thin out. I did all I could to hold on to it, but I had to let it go. And when I met my wife, she was like, wow, you're so handsome. I can't get enough of you. I just love your bald head. I hope she's listening to this. She probably will listen and roll her eyes, but that's besides the point. You just have to learn to let it go. You have to know when to quit. You can't do what you've been doing forever, and that's okay. It's time to move on. It's time to elevate. It's time to pass the baton. It's okay to train the younger generations and to give them the knowledge you have and the expertise you have in your field so they can take it and do great things in the future. Not being able to do this is actually setting up our next generation for failure. So my oldest child is always watching me. Everything I do, copycat, copycat, copycat. So there was a time, I'm pretty big into cooking and all that good stuff. Now, I'll say that I'm not really the biggest fan of cooking. Left to me, food will just magically appear and then I can just eat it. But, I cook my own food, right? And I think my wife appreciates that too. So she's not always tired and all that good stuff. I love when she cooks because, she cooks really well too. I think I'm getting hungry now. Besides that point though, my oldest child is always watching everything I do. So I would be in the kitchen making breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it is. So now, as my oldest is a toddler, I can say, hey, come over here, buddy. Would you like to make some pizza with me? Would you like to make some rice with me? And of course, so I'd go and get the step stool. Buddy would get up there, Okay, put the cheese on the pizza, put the sauce there, put the pepperoni and all that good stuff. We put it in the oven. What I'm doing is passing the baton. I'm teaching my oldest how to survive. Okay, now let's look at this from the standpoint of music, right? Music is always changing. And so coming from somebody who, did all of these major tours, who is into being a music director and all that good stuff, my duty now is to pass on that knowledge to the generations who are underneath me, or even those who are within my generation but are just a few years younger. I can pass on the knowledge that I already had in order how to land the gig, in order how to keep the gig, and what to do on the gig. I can pass that down to them. Now they can take that same knowledge and apply that as a foundation to their present day experiences, and then they can build on top of that, because things will continue to change. But as long as they have that foundation, they can build on top of it. So it's almost like it's almost like building a home. The homes that were built maybe 100 years ago, you have that same mindset, that same plan of, okay, you have to first build a foundation and then you're going to build the home on top of that. Now, the style of the homes from 100 years ago, and then you look at present day, they're much different, okay? And so that's really what I'm trying to drive home. You want to set the foundation, right? Obviously, you're going to let it go, but you want to be able to let go of the knowledge that you have, let go of trying to always do something the same way, and just really pass it on to that next generation and allow them to run with it. You can still reap the benefits from that, okay? I think I've said enough. This is much longer than I anticipated this episode to be, but hopefully you're not disappointed, because it has been a long time since you've heard from me. But to summarize, just you want to let it go. You don't want to set up the next generation for failure. You want to leave them with a solid foundation, move on to your next level. Just because you're letting it go does not necessarily mean that you're stopping. Okay, it just means that you're being elevated to another level and then you're passing it on. Okay, so I'm going to call it quits right there. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. But before I do that, I just want to review the final, not the final, I want to review the 3 points one last time, and hopefully it sticks. So the first point is to become enemies with pride. Don't allow your pride to be your downfall and keep you stuck. The second point is to get out of your comfort zone. Just because it's comfortable, that can also keep you stuck. Get out of your comfort zone. And the third and final point, just let it go, right? You want to set the foundation for those who are younger than you to build on something that's solid. Always remember that a solid foundation will never crumble. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and most importantly, thanks for tuning into this podcast. I really, really appreciate you. Hey, don't forget to share this with somebody that you know, love, and you're concerned about. Or you can share it with somebody that you're not even concerned about. But be sure to share it. Like, comment, and share. Also, click the link in the description. I have many more great things in store for you. Let's connect. God bless.